He has spent over a decade as a Broward County police officer. In 2021 to 2022, Mike campaigns as the Libertarian candidate for January's special election in Florida's 20th Congressional District. It is my honor to welcome Mike ter Maat.
This thing working? Can you hear me in the back? Yep, that's too bad, because I'm probably going to say some stuff that pisses you off tonight. I'm sorry about that. How terrific, by the way, is Andrew? Was that on spot? There is no higher calling than running for local office, and that is the truth. There's just one thing that he said that I got a real problem with. He said that medical decisions need to be made by you and your doctor, which kind of cuts me out because I always do whatever my wife tells me to do. So, and by the way, I resent the implication that the federal government is smart as Nancy is. So that's why we really have to avoid these mandates. Look, speaking of weird and speaking of COVID, it turns out to be true that your government took money from you and your neighbors forcibly, by the way, mixed it with a bunch of money from the peoples of other nations, invested it in a laboratory in China for purposes of not gain-of-function research, but apparently, as Dr. Fauci would lead you to believe, something adjacent to gain-of-function research. But money being fungible, this money of yours went to the development of viral agents, accelerated that development, and apparently something accidentally leaked. God help us, let's stay on page right now and hope that it was accidental, right? Something accidentally leaked, killed a couple of million people in the United States, killed millions of people around the world. Apparently the White House knew all about this early on in terms of the laboratory investment, and the decision was made that you didn't need to know about any of this, right? You didn't need to know about any of this. As horrible as all that was, and it was, put a pin in that just for a moment, because I'm going to argue that nothing about the story I just told was the important part of that story. It turns out to also be true that your government took money from you, again, forcibly, again, mixed it with a bunch of money from other nations, made an investment abroad, working with a Scandinavian country. We shipped material and, by the way, troops over to the Baltic Sea and blew up a pipeline at the bottom of the ocean. That actually turned out to be true. By the way, I don't want to hear anyone say, I didn't see that coming completely. Now, most of us wouldn't have guessed that that was the primary candidate, is the US government. But I don't want to hear anyone say, whoa, that's shocking, right? I mean, in some weird way, I think we all went, yeah, you know, I get that. And again, the White House has decided that you don't need to understand any of that. Now, that's bad stuff. It costs the German people, it will cost the German people, tens of billions of dollars per year in extra energy costs. Obviously costs $100 billion to the international consortium that owns the damn pipeline, right? Cost the Russian people up front, but somewhat ironically, if you listen to the White House objective page, somewhat ironically actually increased the number of petrodollars flowing into the Russian military. All of that is obviously horrible stuff. Put a pin in that, because I want to argue that none of what I've just told you about that story is the worst part about that story either. These two stories that seem to have absolutely nothing to do with each other, the worst part about each one of them is that they have everything to do with each other. In each case, and in 100 other cases, those of you at the table without gray hair, try to, ask someone at the table who's been around and remembers the 60s. Otherwise, I'll explain it over dessert. In 100 other cases as well, your government is one that operates in the shadows. It operates for the purpose not of serving your interests, or frankly, the interests of anyone else around the world, but to gain power, to bring power to itself, and to honor the interests of the politicians who run it. This is the unfortunate truth, and it's accelerating. There are a variety of reasons why this trend is accelerating. We always talk about how weird it is in foreign lands, in Asia, especially in Latin America, where we see democracies flip toward authoritarianism, and we say, good thing that can't happen here. The way it happens is some politician convinces you that what really matters is not the loss of your civil liberties or that funny constitution that you used to think was so important. What really matters, what you really need to fear, is that other idiot coming to power. And I'm here to help you. I just need more power myself to make sure that other idiot doesn't come to power. Whatever you might feel about what used to be the Republican agenda, whatever you might feel about what used to be the Democratic agenda, you have to admit that both of them have the same agenda now, and that's to keep the other idiot out of power. This is where I appreciate that, but if you interrupt me, I'll lose my train of thought. It's very important that I just stay on a roll and then I crash, okay? It is very important for us to remember that the growth of authoritarianism can and is happening here in the United States. I believe it is accelerating. I believe that this creates for us, as a party, an opportunity in 2024. Now, as you might imagine, I spend an enormous amount of time talking about the opportunity before us in 2024. I do believe that we can play a significant role on the American political landscape. I believe that the authoritarianism growing in the United States plays into our wheelhouse. I believe that more Americans than ever before understand that most of our real big problems come from crappy public policy. These are all reasons why we have an opportunity, and none of that do I want to talk to you about tonight. 2024 represents for us not merely an opportunity. Remember that we as libertarians are the philosophical descendants of the people that put together our Constitution and that founded our country and did so for only one good reason, and that's to protect our individual liberties. Do you think that a Republican is going to stand up for your liberty?
No.
Do you think a Republican is going to go out on some stump someplace and tell the truth about the fact that taking money from people forcibly and using it to project military power abroad for no other reason than to maintain our hegemony is evil? They will not say that. That's for us to say. It's for us to say loudly and clearly, do you think that a Democrat is going to stand up for, well, fill in the blank, your First Amendment, your Second, your Fourth Amendment? It ain't happening, okay? It's not happening. We have... Now I remember, you put me back on track. It's up to us. We have a whole bunch of people in this room, and that represents a piece of the New York Libertarian Party. So multiply that by 2 or 3, and multiply it by 50. That seems like a lot of people. It's not. We do not have a large number of people on our side of this fight. As people have told us in the past, we need to pick up our own shovel, each and every one of us. And remember that it is not for yourself that you pick up this shovel. It is not for even your family. It's not even for people in this room. It is for others around this country who we call brothers and sisters for no other reason than the fact that they are Americans. Remember that those among us who are least able to afford it are the ones hurt worst by an array of tax policies. Think about Social Security. Think about how regressive it is. Welfare policies. Whose families are destroyed by bad welfare policies?
People who receive welfare.
People in this country who can least resist the government are those that are most rapidly swept up in the world's most oppressive criminal justice system.
Preach.
I happen to know people who are least able to afford it are the ones that we need to be fighting for. This is not merely an opportunity for us. This is an obligation. This is our call of duty because there is no one else out there to do it. And if we don't, we're heading in the wrong direction, fast, hard, and quietly in the shadows. Everyone's got to pick up a shovel. Thank you. Thank you very much. Katrina said earlier we have time for 1 or 2 questions, but they have to be weird. Oh, I saw, Charles, I saw your hand go down. I respect that because you didn't think it was weird enough. Man, you don't look weird, but I'll give you a chance. What's your question?
What is the Gold New Deal?
What is the Gold New Deal? That is not weird. All you have to do is go to goldnewdeal.org. But I will tell you something weird about it. The reason we have separate branding for the platform that I'm running on is not because it's such a cute name. And we're making fun of the New Deal. We're making fun, obviously, of the Green New Deal. It's all cute and fun and happy. That's got nothing to do with it. The reason it's separately branded is to assert the commitment of the campaign to that package of extremely transformative ideas so that we cannot back down. Does that make sense? Once you're out there branded hard, branded explicitly, we have our own URL, you can't back down, right? There is no amount of looking stupid that would exceed that. That's why we're doing it, because we believe that what really matters is to lead with principle and be obliged not to back down. Now, ma'am, you certainly have a weird question. Go ahead.
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to know if you run, do you think you can get more than Gary Johnson?
Yes, absolutely. Gary Johnson made it to double digits in the polls, and he didn't have a campaign. He was running on, I get this wrong all the time.
Aleppo?
No, that I remember. I'm like, he was running on, I'm fiscally conservative like a Republican, I'm socially liberal like a Democrat.
And you think you'll be louder?
And I'm sorry, if that's your shtick, you actually got no game. You're defining yourself in terms of the duopoly. And by the way, and this is important, you're not even telling the truth, you're lying to people. Because Republicans aren't fiscally conservative. Democrats are not socially liberal in any real sense. We are not like that. We don't go around canceling each other because they don't agree with us. So yes, absolutely. I've got the background, which is the reason he made it to double digits in the polls, but we've got the program that he didn't have.
Tell us how your life experiences impact your views on this.
In less than a week? Well, let me give you the condensed version. If you're an economist and you become a cop, the first thing that you learn is, if you hadn't been an economist, being a cop will turn you into one. Because you get to see the effects of bad public policy up close. And so you immediately start wondering, why is it no one else sees this, right? And at the same time, you realize how unnerving it is to be a cop, and it doesn't matter how hard you work, or frankly, how bad you are at your job, you're going to get paid the same amount, because the union has such a stranglehold over a lack of accountability. So the long and the short of it is, I do believe that both communities and officers will be better off when we make managing police officers more like any other industry, where there's market forces. Good cops get paid more, mediocre cops get paid less, crappy cops get fired. We replace qualified immunity with liability insurance, so cops feel the pinch of misbehavior. Bad ones get priced out of the market. We work with the unions in a way that squeezes out their interest in maintaining that everyone gets paid the same amount by bringing in that third-party check of the liability insurance provider. We have time?
Yeah, one more.
One more. Again, you don't look very strange. You're a corrections officer, which is strange already, so go ahead.
How can our law enforcement get back on its feet from where it is?
I'm sorry.
How How can you help law enforcement get back on the feet where it is?
Oh boy. I believe that law enforcement suffers from a couple of problems right now. One is this idea I was trying to put my finger on earlier, which is that there's no incentive to do a good job. And it absolutely runs counter to the experience of most of us in other industries in this room who understand you have to work hard to do a good job and you'll get paid more or rewarded in some way and you expect accountability. When that is removed, it's very disheartening over the long run. And that's when you find yourself doing nothing but waiting for your pension check. That's extremely disheartening. It really undermines how you see your business. And that is a big contributing factor to bad behavior. The other factor is getting rid of qualified immunity, not because it affects so many cases, because it doesn't. The reason we need to get rid of qualified immunity is because two things. One is police officers think it's important. I spent 11 and a half years thinking it was more important than it is. And the second reason is because it sets the tone for how deferential courts are to cops. Understanding that there's always going to be a little bit of deference to someone who's in public service and sworn and familiar with the system, blah, 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 blah. But courts have gone way overboard in terms of the amount of deference to cops. We need to put that back in check as a factor of accountability. And the reason this is so important is because it is absolutely un-American not to be able to seek redress in court when you feel like a cop, a city, a police department has done you wrong. Which is why I believe that we need to bring in private sector liability insurance to bring this back, make it more like what a surgeon experiences, for example, if that makes sense. And I believe that with more accountability, more market forces, people who shouldn't be in the business will be not in the business. Others will make more money. Recruiting will be stronger because there'll be a greater incentive to, excel, which is what most people are looking for. The reason, full disclosure to the rest of the group, you and I have talked about this and about how discouraging things can be. I believe that the police culture is extremely discouraging to officers, and I believe it's extremely discouraging to communities, and those have to get fixed at the same time. Those are opposite sides of the same coin, if that makes sense. Yes, ma'am, but you're getting me in trouble with Katrina.
No, it's fine. That's not last question, but,
Yes, last question.
do you believe that you need to change the regulations for police officers? Because as you said, you were economists going into the field. So what do you believe?
About changing
The requirements.
the requirements for, you mean, to become an
To
officer?
become an officer, because as you said, you were economists going
Yeah.
into the role, so then that helped with.
It did, but what really helped was having gray hair. Both metaphorically and actually. I went in at age 49, I worked as a cop from age 49 to 60. Having gray hair makes a huge difference. You show gray hair, people all settle down. Right? It's like grandpa's here, don't want to embarrass yourself in front of pops. But metaphorically, it matters even more. And so I mean, no disrespect. I think you used to have gray hair. Metaphorically, it matters even more. I worry about hiring 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds. And we know departments who have done it. And they're terrific young men, right? And in some cases, young women, although the women tend to join when they're in their late 20s and the men when they're very, very young. It's a weird phenomenon. Yes, we need to get better at that. We will get better at that when we make it a more desirable profession, where you can be compensated for doing well. When the bad officers get fired, it'll make it more prestigious to be in the business. Does that make sense? There's no prestige attached to being in an industry where any schmuck can go 25 years without getting fired, right? But if you can hang in there, do a good job, make more money, that'll be seen as something the community appreciates more. That'll help with recruiting. That'll help weed people out.
Amen.
Does that make sense? Yeah, it's a tough thing. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Pardon me?
Absolute immunity?
For everyone?
No, what you think about absolute immunity for prosecutors?
Oh, for prosecutors, so I mean for everyone.
No.
Well, it's the same deal. Prosecutors should have to carry liability insurance as well as other elected or appointed officials. And that's not a matter of disrespect. That's not a matter of saying, oh, I think prosecutors are crappy and therefore we need to knuckle them under and therefore we need to take away their immunity. No, I don't mean it like that at all. Because having liability insurance is still going to protect you. I mean, nobody's in favor of, look, I lost my house because I made a mistake at work on Tuesday, right? That's not what this is about. Exactly. But you should be required to carry your own liability insurance, like a doctor, so that if you're bad at your job, you're going to get priced out. What we want is for the private sector organization to come in from the outside, require lots of information, and help hold you accountable. Because right now, politicians don't do a good job of holding their staff accountable, especially in police departments, but elsewhere also. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it's.
In the city where I worked, our mayor wasn't held accountable until the FBI took her away. You know, we want it to be nipped in the bud before it gets that far.
Right, because that's immunity often stops judges from making decisions that they otherwise would like to make, because they're stopped in case of land from the from absolute immunity. They're pretty much forced to run certain judgments.
Yes. And I recognize that most judges would argue with you on that, but I suspect you're right.
I have rulings from judges that
Yeah.
for absolute immunity.
Yeah, no. I believe it. I'm just pointing out, just because you and I agree doesn't mean everyone in the world does, right? There's a big counter argument to that. But again, they should be carrying their own liability insurance. That's how it should work. Doctors don't say, well, you know, I didn't mean it. Suck it up, buttercup. That's not how it works. There's an insurance company that backs them up. Thank you.